Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tales from the Fandom podcast. This is David here, and I am here to just give you some brief information before we get into the interview today with Tawny Platis of the Dirty Bits podcast. I wanted to say thank you first to everybody who listened, participated in Women in Tabletop Gaming Month, whether you were just someone listening to the episodes, if you participated in them, if you responded to the blog interview questions, if you created additional content and were partners with us. I just want to say thank you. It was a tremendous success as far as I can tell, and I certainly hope that everyone enjoyed it, and hopefully you took something away from it, and that's all I can ask for. And I couldn't have done it without everybody's help. And that's all I really have to say is just thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is something that got a lot bigger than what I had anticipated, but I really think it made a positive impact on the community, and I can only say thank you for that. If you found the podcast through Women in Tabletop Gaming Month, welcome, and I hope that you enjoy our normal episodes, our episodes where I get a different guest each week come on to talk about the fandoms that they are really interested in, that they're passionate about, that they want to bring to the light if they're smaller fandoms. And we've got a great catalog of previous episodes for you to take a look at and listen to. We cover everything from TV shows and movies, comic books, video games, literature, cosplay, role-playing games, and just anything in between. As long as the people that I have on are passionate about it, we will talk about it, and I'm up to talking about anything. We've got a great episode here with Tawny coming up in just a minute. I do want to just promote that I have a Patreon account for Tales from the Fandom, along with Tales from the Five Nations, which is our Eberron Savage Worlds actual play podcast. If you're at all interested in supporting the show, definitely take a look at patreon.com/talesfromthefandom. Not only do you get access to the episodes as I get them done and completed, you also get things such as ebooks, merchandise, and more than that. And there's always something there for everybody at every level, and it's just a way to show your support. And I'm just happy to have you as a listener. But if you're at all interested in helping the podcast or supporting the podcast, it is there for that. We also have our merchandise up at TeePublic, which is teepublic.com/user/talesfromthefandom, I believe. That link will be in the show notes. So I just want to say thank you. I want to say welcome back. We've got a lot of episodes that are ready to go for July and for August, and then we're going to have a special schedule for September, and I'll be talking about that as it gets closer. But I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for supporting us, or thank you for listening. Thank you for the shares and the retweets and the likes and the positive comments and feedback. Just thank you. This is the only time really where I get to come on and just thank everybody, but thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy this episode, and I will talk to you on the next one. Also, a brief note about this episode. Tawny and I recorded back in January of 2018, and at that time, Westworld Season 2 had not been released. Our discussion of Westworld is strictly about Season 1, and then our thoughts about Season 2. It may be a little bit outdated, and for that I apologize. It's just the way that things worked with the schedule. Also, if you're interested in visiting Tawny's site, finding the podcast, the Dirty Bits podcast, you can find it at tawnyvoice.com/dirtybits. That's tawnyvoice.com/dirtybits, and the links will be in the show notes as well as on the social media sites. Thank you so much for listening. And welcome to another episode of Tales from the Fandom. And today I am joined by a fellow podcaster and host of the Dirty Bits podcast. I'm talking today with Tawny Platis. How are you doing today, Tawny?
Hi, David. I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. We are bridging the coast of East and West today. That's always a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it's a fun one with scheduling, right?
I know, time zones, man. Like, there was a time where I had to just Google and be like, what time is it in, and insert the state that my guest was from, because there are some states that don't follow the daylight savings time, and it's like, oh, well, they're 2 hours behind at one point or 3 hours behind at another point. It gets crazy.
I totally understand. I have the same thing. I teach voiceover, acting, the whole shebang to my students, and I have people in Germany that I'm working with. So as far as scheduling goes, like, I'm always Googling. I'm like, wait, what time is it where you are? What time am I going to be meeting you? It gets overwhelming.
Exactly. Like, I've been lucky enough to have guests on from like England and the Netherlands and Australia, and it's always that challenge of, okay, I'm available at this time. Let me figure out what that means for your time zone to see if it even can work.
Yeah. Is 2 a.m. okay for you?
Sometimes it is.
I know. And then they're so lovely too. Like, the guests and the students, they're always like, no, that's fine. I get it. I'm like, oh, I'll stay up late. We can do it at 10 p.m. if that helps. No big.
Right. For me, I'm like, okay, well, I stay up until about midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning anyway. Does that work? And then will I wake up my wife?
Right. Oh gosh, that's always the thing when you live with other people. So you're in another room and you're like, ha ha. And they're like, it's 1 a.m. Be quiet.
Exactly. Now, you're into a number of different fandoms, and one of the ones that you and I share, and I've loved it ever since I was first exposed to it way back in the day, is Hayao Miyazaki's movies.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm in love.
How did you first stumble across them? Because I know some people were indoctrinated, and I say that lovingly, with with My Neighbor Totoro as kids, and I had already been past that point. And like, my first Miyazaki movie was Princess Mononoke back in like the late 90s. But how was it for you? How and when did you get exposed to it?
I was definitely older, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the context was for it. If somebody I can't remember who introduced me to it exactly, but I remember it was Ponyo. And I was, gosh, how old was I? I can't even remember. I was either an older teenager, early 20s, something like that. I was definitely in the teen years. But I can't remember the exact context, but I remember sitting down and watching Ponyo with some group of friends, and it just blew me away. The artwork was incredible. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, this is the Japanese Disney, as they call him. And it totally translated with that, where you just feel that magic, especially with something like Ponyo, where it's so much a fairy tale, and it's so sweet. It's the sweetest, cutest movie. It's so gorgeous. The artwork is incredible. And after I saw Ponyo, it was all over for me there. I was just like a huge Miyazaki fan. I have a sleeve too. My left arm is covered in Miyazaki tattoos.
Oh, that's awesome.
I go deep.
Yeah, Ponyo, when they were promoting it, I think when it's in theaters over here, I kept reading a lot of things like, oh, it's the Japanese Little Mermaid. And that's the thing that I think when they're trying to promote movies, especially like Miyazaki's movies, they get totally wrong on promoting them and getting them out in front of people, because it's like, that's not Japanese Little Mermaid at all.
It has been called that quite a bit. Like, I get him being called Japanese Disney because of the emotion I think he's better than Disney myself. I think he's a better person. But the emotion that is evoked from him is like the same thing, that wonder, that childlike wonder that you lose as you grow up. You still get that from him, and just that optimism. And his characters are always such strong women. And I just love that about him and what he does. Everything about his films is incredible that way.
Which are your favorite films of the Miyazaki movies?
Ponyo is definitely up there. That might be my favorite, and Spirited Away. and Howl's Moving Castle, and Kiki's Delivery Service, and Princess Mononoke, and Totoro, of course, always Totoro. I mean, it's so hard to choose. Those are probably like my most like beloved ones, of course, but they're all incredible.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I was lucky enough that the movie theater in my small Florida town even showed Princess Mononoke or Spirited Away in the movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
I have my kids now, and they've seen the DVD box art for Princess Mononoke, and I'm like, no, you guys can't watch that yet. Stick with Spirited, or not Spirited Away. Stick with Kiki or Totoro, like Castle in the Sky. Those are your speed right now. Princess Mononoke is for when you're a little bit older.
That one was, I think that one was rated PG-13 for good reasons. It is fairly graphically violent, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, it's been like a year or two since my last viewing. But
you are remembering correctly.
Yeah, it's like I think that's pretty intense for kids.
It is. One of the things that they do here, there's like a very independent movie theater that's here in Orlando. And what they do every year is that they screen a Miyazaki movie, and it's free admission for the kids.
Aww.
And you just like my wife and I will pay for our tickets, and we go, and it's a place where you order food and drinks and you watch the movie. And I love that they include like every year's a Miyazaki movie. That's the first place that they saw Castle in the Sky. They've seen Kiki's Delivery Service there. We missed last year's, which was Porco Rosso, and that's one of the ones that I haven't seen, but I've heard good things about that one.
That's so sweet. We actually, funny enough, we have almost that same exact setup here. Like little independent movie theater. They show Miyazaki movies like every year. Same thing, you can get food, and it's the coolest thing to be able to actually see them on the big screen, because I missed a lot of those. Like, I think Totoro came out before I was born, I want to say. So I didn't get to see that one in theater. So it's really cool that they give you that opportunity to be able to do that again. Yeah, Porco Rosso is my least favorite Miyazaki film, but I think that's just me.
Yeah, I think I've got like that one. I think there's a few others that I missed. Either I know, like, I think it's Grave of the Fireflies, which
I don't think that one's Miyazaki. I'm not. Was that Studio Ghibli even? I could look it up.
I thought it was, but maybe it's.
I was not. It's so good. I just didn't want anybody to like not be able to find it, I guess. But yeah, no, that one's like a one and done. I think was that, Paul Chomo from Varmints.
Yep.
We were talking about that's like you only need to see that movie once because it's so intense.
And I'm looking it up now. Yes, it is a Studio Ghibli.
Look at you taking me to school.
I'm not taking anybody to school.
You're like, no, it's Studio Ghibli.
No, I like making sure, and I'll
I
make
do
sure
too.
that...
I'm such a stickler for that stuff, which I know if you listen to my podcast probably doesn't seem like it because I talk about people from history using Snapchat, but yeah, I'm always like, wait, no, who directed that? Where did that come from? Technically, it's from I guess that's pretty common in the fandom though, is people like get the details right.
Well, I know my wife doesn't like it sometimes because we'll have a conversation. I'm like, well, since we actually have our smartphones right here, let me Google that and double check.
See, that's me too, is I'm just like, you can just find out what the right answer is in like 2 seconds. It's the coolest thing in the world. We have the technology to do it.
I know. You don't have to have epic fights like we had back in the late 90s about like who was right and then having to wait for like something to be cleared up months later.
Exactly. You can just know instantly. It's amazing. But yeah, Grave of the Fireflies is one of those like one and done kind of movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gnarly.
Yeah, I know for me, like Spirited Away is one of those where like I'll watch it, but it'll take a couple years before I'm like ready to watch it again. But in the same vein, like Totoro or Kiki or Castle in the Sky is definitely one of the ones where I'm like, I can watch this every day. And
they're so uplifting and sweet.
They are. And I have with Totoro, like after my kids saw Totoro and I had bought the DVD, they're like, we're going to watch this every day.
You're like, I'm okay with that, actually.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Like, let them watch that because that's good stuff. I know exactly what's going on in the movie, and I'm not questioning things. Like I'll walk out because they have access to Netflix on like the TV or on their Kindles. I'm like, what are you guys even watching? They'll tell me. I'm like, that has no redeeming quality. Like, why would you watch that?
You're like deeply offended. You're like, who's been teaching you these things?
Right? Like before we had kids, my wife and I like used to jokingly be like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to ever take them to these terrible movies," and I have had to take them to some of those movies, and it kills my soul.
I know. At that age, you think they would have a better respect for quality film.
I made my wife take them because I had taken them to like go see Trolls and go see something else, and so then Boss Baby came out, and I was like nope, that's all you go take them. And she's like, yeah, that's the best $12 nap that I've had for a while.
Oh, that's where I draw the line. Like, as we don't have kids, but I will tell you, if I did, I'd be like, no. You can't. I'm sorry. Just as like good parenting, I can't take you to see Boss Baby. I'm sorry. Sit down and watch Totoro.
we finally exposed them, like, because they're getting to that point where like the kids around them are watching things that sometimes border the line of what we would allow, or definitely cross the line. Right. And like last year we took them finally to go see Wonder Woman in the theater, and they handled that. So we're like, okay. And Star Wars, The Last Jedi, we saw that with them. So we're slowly rolling those movies out, but it's like one of my sons is like, I want to watch, and he'll like name some horror movie that he's heard of. And it's like, no, you're not watching a horror movie yet. How old are they? 9 and then twin 8-year-olds.
Oh, okay. That is kind of that weird in-betweener age where it's like, not ready for horror movies, the grown-up stuff quite yet, but definitely getting over some of those younger cartoons for sure. That's a tough age to navigate with film.
It is, and especially because like the one who is asking for the horror movies is the same kid who, if he sees a moth, he runs away screaming and crying. No.
You're like, here, let's start you out with Silence of the Lamb. You like moths so much. No. Oh yeah, that's a tough one at that age, especially like you mentioned with we don't have kids, but I in my former life I was in the family child baby industry, and I babysat for like way earlier than I should have started babysitting for years and years and years. That was always the thing that I noticed, is like you have the friends that are telling them about this stuff, and I'm like, who's letting their 9-year-old, like when I was that age, I'm like, who's letting their 9-year-old watch like Saw? I'm like, right? What is wrong with you?
Right, like we used to get flack from my mother-in-law because she would let her, like my sister. So I guess it's a cousin's. I don't know. It's my brother-in-law's son, and he was like 3 or 4 at the time. And she's like letting him watch like Spider-Man and all, like.
Oh wow!
And it's like, but they're rated like PG or PG-13. There's language. There's all this stuff, like, and she's like, oh, it's okay. But then we're at the same point. It's like, no, it's not okay for our kids. Our kids aren't going to watch it.
Yeah, that's tough to navigate in the family settings when it's like the different standards on the different sides. That's a tough one to be like, that's not okay for our kid, and that's okay for yours, but not ours.
It is. Now, as far as like Studio Ghibli movies or Miyazaki movies, is there one where you're like, dang, everyone needs to watch this movie because more people need to know about it?
I feel that way about Ponyo. Like, there's something about that movie that's just so pure and sweet. And I don't know, it gives you all the warm fuzzies, and it's so magical. It's so awe-inspiring, like the water and the animation and the artwork with it. And I feel like a lot of people don't know about Ponyo. Like, they know Totoro, they know Spirited Away, and which are all incredible movies. I love Spirited Away. But just there's something, and I don't know if it was just like, my first Miyazaki, but there's just something just so special about it. Like, and so cute. Like, the kids in that are so cute, and like the way that they love each other is just like so pure and sweet. And I don't know, like my husband doesn't particularly care for Ponyo, but I think that most people would.
Yeah, I think for people, as far again, like I said, I think it was totally mismarketed or marketed not the way that it should have been. But with Miyazaki movies, they're hard to market anyway, with what stories they're trying to tell, and obviously, is coming from the Japanese background of experiences. Because I remembered, like, I didn't watch Ponyo when it came out in theaters, and I waited until DVD because I was like, Little Mermaid for in Japan, it's not anything that I'm familiar with as a story, but it's such a beautiful film. And I think one of the things, like you touched on with like the water, is that animating water is one of those things that's super hard to do. Like if you don't have real water, animating water is like that one thing where it's like, dang, that's hard. Like it's water and fire are the two things for animating to make it look so realistic, and they just nailed it.
And snow too, right? Like I remember this like trivia fact about Brave, where it was originally supposed to take place in the snow, and even Disney Pixar was like, we can't make this fly, guys. Like we need to redo this entire movie because snow is so difficult to animate too. And I remember reading that, and I'm like, I never thought about that. Like how impossible that is. Like it's just white terrain like that. It's like blinding. And then trying to like translate that over to film. But yeah, that's such a good point, is the water and how difficult that is and how they really captured it. Not even with like the, what'd you say? Like the computer animation, with just like the traditional animation. That makes it so much more impressive.
Yeah, his movies are so beautiful. And
they're gorgeous.
And I like that relatively they translate them well for when they do the voiceovers for the characters. That because I've watched it in like subtitled, or I'll watch the English dub with the subtitles, and they match up with what they are, like the intent of what they're trying to say. And I like that. I like that they focus on that instead of just throwing in whatever or changing what it's supposed to mean or how the characters are supposed to be acting.
I totally agree. Like I love that about him too. You totally nailed it. I love when they concentrate on that, and I think a lot of that just has to go down to like availability and budget. Like Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli, they have the ability to like get the best people to like help them translate their film over into like the culture, into the language, so that people are able to really understand the meaning so much as like the word for word translation. And I think that's why he's one of the reasons why he's so beloved, is because his films are so, what'd you say, like attainable for people.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I know that the one thing that I'm loving now, although I think it's changed now because I don't think Disney has the distribution rights anymore. And the one thing I did love is that they finally, right before the distribution rates changed, like the prices on the Blu-rays went down to like a reasonable price. I was like, oh, I can buy them all. And
I know, the Costco, right? At Costco?
It's on Amazon because I put in my
nice.
wish list, and it's like, I remembered when they were originally like $25 or $30, and they finally got into like that $14 or $15 price range. I'm like, yes, I can afford them now.
We did the same thing. We were at and it's so cute too because people post about it. I notice, and they're just like, Costco has the Studio Ghibli movies for $13. And we're like, oh my god! So like we stocked up at Costco, same things. They were all $13. And we're like, no, we have them all.
Yes, and those are the things, because like when I was younger, I would buy like the videotapes or the DVDs and whatnot, and I'd have like that huge collection of stuff that I have but I'd never watch.
Yeah,
and now
totally.
I'm to the point of I'm only going to buy the stuff that I'm actually going to rewatch. Like there's no reason I need to buy every DVD when it comes out and have a huge like bookcase of DVDs. That's not me anymore.
Totally. It's hard to justify with streaming now too. Like what we noticed, where like they don't even make DVD players for like your laptop, or like disc, whatever it's called. I'm not the tech girl, so forgive me for my ignorance, but like you can't even put a disc into I'm on my Mac right now, there's nowhere to put a disc into this thing. Like most people stream nowadays, and like that's like, you know, what my husband and I were talking about is like, we can't justify buying DVD movies because everything's online. And you know what I mean? We're like, it almost feels like it's just taking up space, and like we don't even own a DVD player. So there's like a few of those classics we have for like just in case, but like kind of like you said, like those ones where you're like, I know that I will watch this like a million times again.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's the thing is like when we were moving around, I had this box of videotapes, and I still have them. They're in the garage, and
Like VHS.
Yeah, VHS tapes.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep them only because it's like it's the reminder of I would like to eventually have these on DVD, but then again, they might be on streaming, or I could just buy it digitally, and there's no need to even keep it around anymore.
Exactly. It's like, I mean, with the VHS ones, I feel like it's almost more sentimental too. Like, I think somebody in my family, I think like my siblings have them, but they have all of our like our Disney VHS tapes from like the 90s when all that stuff was coming out. Like, you know, like the original Aladdin and Lion King and everything. And it's like, I think they have a VCR too. Like they kept it just for that reason because of the sentimental value. It's like those are all the videos we watched like growing up and everything.
Yeah, I've got those Disney VHS tapes too.
They're so cool. It was the funniest thing. I was babysitting for a friend once, and we were going to watch a movie. I'm like, do you want to watch Lion King? She's like, yeah. And so I go, and I'm like, okay, this was years ago. I'm like, I'm going to grab the VHS for her, right? So I get it, and I put it down, and she opens up, and she goes, oh no, where's the movie? I'm like, oh my God, you don't know what a VHS tape is. Like, I was like, wow, I'm not supposed to feel old at 23 here, kid. You need to back up. But that just blew me away. I'm like that was like the first time I realized, I'm like, wow, technology is moving so fast. This kid has never seen a VHS tape, and she's, you know, like 5.
Yeah, I don't think our kids have seen a VHS tape. They might, maybe they have at their at my mother-in-law's place, but
yeah, now I don't expect it. I'm like, yeah, I don't think you would know what a DVD is even at this point. You probably only know streaming. Oh, it goes by fast.
It does. Now, what doesn't go by fast, with a perfect segue, is HBO TV series.
Hey, that was beautiful.
How about that? You just set it up right there.
You're welcome.
Now, I'd love to talk about the one that's coming back first. So Westworld is on deck for coming out sometime this year. I don't know if they have an official date yet.
I didn't see one.
Did you get into... Because I know I was late to the Westworld game. I didn't get into it until after it had ended. And then even, I think, a few months after that, when someone was finally like, oh, you need to watch this. And I finally did. What, were you someone that watched it every week? Did you like?
Yes.
Okay.
I was riveted from the beginning, but I had a little bit of background too. Like I was really excited about it because I knew about the original Westworld and really, really enjoyed it. Like it was really fun, kind of, you know, schlocky. I love Grindhouse, like that era and like the 70s stuff and just everything around that. Like it's one of my favorite things. And that's not totally Grindhouse, but it's kind of in that category for me. And I was really looking forward to it, just seeing like the promos and like, you know, the way that they promoted it was just so cool. Like how they showed all this different stuff and it just really evoked like so much wondering and like questioning for me. And I was like, I was so excited to see it and like religiously every week. I think I watched like the episode like a couple of times each week it came out too. Like big fan, totally fell in love with it right away.
I'm shocked because a lot of people, number one, have never even heard that there's even a Westworld before that. Like that just blew me away.
I wouldn't expect people to know that though. Like I knew it was like, I was surprised. Like they're like, oh, Westworld. I'm like, wait, that Westworld? Like the rando Westworld? Like that I've like seen before? And like I looked it up, I'm like, no freaking way. That's crazy. So it was super cool to me. It was one of those like, oh my gosh, you know, if you ever have that where it's like some little thing that you like and then it gets like popular, how like fun and exciting that is, and you almost feel like you're kind of like with them. You know, like you're like,
oh yeah,
yay!
yeah. That's always like I hate to sound like it sometimes, like the hipster, like, oh, I liked it before it became cool, but there's
Oh, it's
definitely
so
been
hipster. Totally. I know what you
there's
mean.
definitely been that thing where it's like, oh, I liked it before it became mainstream, where oh, people are
Yeah.
into it now and talking about it. It's like, but that was my thing before you.
I think it's cool. Like I'm almost like I'm like proud of them. Like I have that with like Tommy Wiseau's The Room, where it's like I was right at that age where I watched it as an April Fool's joke, like over and over on Comedy Central. Like I went to the live showings with Tommy Wiseau when he was just going around to college campuses and everything. So it was like I've like met those guys that it's like Tommy Wiseau is up on the stage in the Academy Awards, and it just blew my mind. I'm like, that guy was on campus just talking to us all about his stupid little awful movie, and I'm like, I'm so proud of him. And like I think it's like the coolest thing when you get to watch him succeed. Like I have that a lot with music, funny enough, where it's like you found out about them when they're little, and then it's like the next thing you know, they're at the Oscars, and you're like, oh my god, good for you. Like I love that stuff. I think it's cool. Like it feels like you're doing it with them in a way.
Oh yeah, totally. I think like after that initial, I know for me the initial, oh, I liked it before it was cool. It's like, welcome, please. I have more people to talk to things about. Like, you know, I can talk to you about this now.
Totally, exactly. Like somebody else really enjoys this, and like I'm glad that they know about it. And then, the artist can keep producing their content because more people are buying it. There's more exposure, so it's like I love it.
Now, what hooked you about this Westworld? Was it like the cinematography, the story, characters, music?
Yes. All of those. It's flawless. Like, and that's probably overreaching. Like, I'm really picky, and I have weird tastes too. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's like universally loved that I just don't understand, and a lot of my favorite stuff, like most people, a lot of times they're like, "What? Why do you like that? I can't even believe that." But so take this with a grain of salt. But for me, Westworld was just perfection. I was like, it was flawless. Like I saw no problems with it. And like most of the time, like again, super picky lady over here. Like I'm watching stuff, I'm like, continuity error, that was wrong, that was overacting, that was underact. What are they doing? This is stupid. Like with Westworld, it was perfection. And the score, like you mentioned, is gorgeous. And I'm a big fan of AI. Like, I love the study of it. I love the development of it. It's extremely interesting to me, like the concept of humanity and consciousness and like how it explored all of that. Like, and I'm not an expert. I'm very uneducated, like formally when it comes to that kind of thing. But like, at least in the depiction, I thought it was very complete. And the way that it was presented and all the questions that they asked, I felt like were relevant and they were timely. Like it was a perfect, like, I don't even know, like, I don't even know if you'd call it a show or a series. Like, it was perfect visual entertainment.
Yeah, I know for me, I started late, like I said, and I got to the point, the person that introduced me was like, oh, keep me updated as you watch. And every episode I'd like send a quick email, be like, oh, I like this. And then it got to the one episode, I'm not going to spoil it because people might start watching it before the next season comes out. And it got to that point where it had that big reveal, like about halfway through. And
Yeah.
I emailed my friend. I was like, what am I watching? Like, I can't believe this. You should have, like, of course, no, don't give me spoilers, but you should have given me like some kind of heads up, wink, wink, nod, nod, like I'm going to see this. And just, it blew me away because on the first watch through, like I'm just watching for entertainment. I'm not like watching to like study or anything like that.
Right.
And like that, it just that the unexpected happened. I was like, I can't believe this.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's I don't know. It's one of those ones. That's why I watched it like so many times each week too. And I've watched the series over and over. I've watched like each episode, as it was released over and over because there's so much that you catch every single time. Like, you're watching it the first time and it's just kind of washing over you. And then like every single time I watched it, I was like, oh my God, that was like a foreshadowing, or oh my God, that was like a reference to this, or whatever it was. Or it's like, oh, I saw what they're trying to communicate there with that particular shot and that particular score. Like it's so loaded. And I love that about, I mean, I keep wanting to call it film because it's so cinematic. I know it's a series, but like, I love that about film. Like when you can tell that everybody involved in it has just as much passion about what they're doing. And that's what I feel like really communicates it with Westworld is everybody was like really took their time. They were really detailed about what they did. Like it seemed like that movie had everything going for it. There wasn't any part of it where it was like, oh, well, she was a bad actor, you know, or, oh, the score's not great. Like everything about it was just like incredible. And that's so hard to find because it's usually there's something in there that wasn't like fantastic and it can still be like an amazing film. There was nothing wrong with it. And I now I want to go watch it again after we're talking about it. I'm like, I'm going to watch Westworld tonight. I was like, I could probably find something that I didn't notice.
Me too. It's my, like, it's one of those shows where when I watched it the first time, you know, I got done. I was like, okay, let me Google. And there was stuff that I didn't pick up on. And when Google like told me like the stuff that I was like, what, wait a minute. I didn't catch that. Let me go back. So I've rewatched it, I think like 3 or 4 times completely. And just the way that it's done and presented is just phenomenal. Like, and even trying to wrap your head around it is like, how are you making it work to like, to do it just like that? And at the same time, it just works so well.
It does. It works. It really is like it's flawless. Like I said, everything else I always feel like I'm so picky and I have an issue with, but with this one I'm like, no, it's perfect. Don't change anything.
Now, do you have a favorite character in the show?
Maeve. I love her. She's amazing.
Yeah, she was the one, like, on the first watch through, like, I didn't connect with her at all. Like, I was like, I don't like her. But then,
no,
like, on the second and third, like, as I started rewatching it, like, I started, like, watching for certain characters. And for her, like, she was one of those ones where I was like, okay, I've got to, like, just focus on her character. And I really, like, she's one of those characters where I started off, towards her, but then at the end, I'm like, I'm really excited to see where she goes next in the next season. She's
so sharp. That's what I loved about her was like right from the beginning, you see she's noticing things and she's taking these, like she's so brave. Like I couldn't, like, even if I was like, you know, oh, I'm pretty sure I know that I'm going to wake up and this is going to repeat itself. I don't know that I could like do the things that she's done in that show. I mean, I don't want to give away spoilers or anything like that. Like, I don't know if I just did.
No, you're okay.
Hopefully you've seen the show by now. But yeah, just like, you know, her bravery and just her intelligence. That's what like so I mean, and she's smoking hot. Like I have a total crush on her, but like I love her character too. She's so brilliant and she's so brave and just everything that she does throughout that show and the risks that she takes and how she figures things out and like the development of her consciousness. Like I was immediately drawn to her. I thought, you know, of course, first I'm just like, you know, dang. But then just as they like developed the character and everything, she was absolutely just captivating to me. Like, I'm like, coolest character, one of the coolest characters on TV.
Oh, absolutely. What are you hoping to see in season 2? What would you love to see them do or see, like, if there's anything like in your head when you're like, oh, I'd love to see X, Y, and Z happen in the show?
Well, I mean, you saw how it ended. Like, there's so much, so many questions that you want answered, of course. Like, I kind of hope that it just, they can draw it out like Game of Thrones and it can just go on forever. But I really, really would love to see, I think they said it was like going to take place in Rome or something, like the coming season. Like it was like a Rome, or you know what I mean? Like a Roman theme. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see it like go beyond like the Westworld into like those different settings and everything. And then of course, you know, all the questions that are still there that I want answered. I want the AI to take over, really. I want the AI to win. Like, yeah, you probably know what you're doing better than these people.
Exactly. Like that's the thing, because I know that they obviously showed one of the possibility of the worlds that they go to at the end of the season, and I've heard the Rome one a lot recently, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I could totally dig that. And it's not like HBO doesn't have experience with that kind of setting, because they did the 2 seasons of Rome, which was awesome. If you've never seen that, you totally need to check it out.
Oh, it's so good.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to Westworld on a level that goes beyond like some of the other TV series that I watch, just because I love those shows where I can just rewatch them over and over again, and I get something new out of it every time.
And that's totally Westworld. You notice something different, or like there's such attention to detail, and you will notice something every single time. I feel like no matter how much you watch it, it's going to be like a different experience every time, just because you're going to notice more.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side of Westworld, which is gearing up for season 2, we have the final season of Game of Thrones, which is going to come out next year in 2019. Again, and this is a different question. Did you read the books first, or did you get into the TV series?
No, I did not read the books. I would love to read the books, but I don't have that kind of time on my hands, unfortunately. But yeah, I originally got into the series like when it came out. I didn't like it at first, funny enough. I had a couple of people that tried to get me into it. I kept watching like the first episode or so, and I was just like, this is so cheesy. Lord of the Rings is better. Like, and my husband actually got me into it. He was like, we need to start watching this. And like the first couple seasons for me, for some reason, were like really tough to get through. And then I was won over. And like, that's another one that I feel like you can watch over and over and over again and notice something every time. And now when I watch like those first couple seasons, I'm like, why was I so salty? Like about that? Like, I have no idea. I'm like, why did I not like this? I can't even remember. I think like my Lord of the Rings fangirl was like too strong or something at the time. And I was just like, Lord of the Rings did it better. Yeah. So that's how I got into that in particular.
Which house is your favorite?
Which house? That's a tough one. I don't know if I have a favorite house just because I like the Dothraki so much.
Okay.
But my favorite house, that's tough. That's hard to pick a favorite house, I feel like. Yeah, I don't know. I really like the Tyrells. Okay. Like the Lady Marjorie's whole people over there.
Yes.
Just because Olenna's she's such a bad you know what.
Yes, whenever she was on the screen, you know something good is going to come out of her mouth, and just she's going to take it to her level.
Yeah, like watching, I'm like, I want to be Olenna when I grow up. She's cool. She's a cool old lady.
I know that, like, if my kids were the proper age, I'd totally be like, you guys need to be just like Lyanna Mormont. I'm like, she's 12 years old, and she's like the best.
She is one of my favorite characters on that show. That might be my favorite house, actually, is Mormont, because every character is fantastic. But Lyanna Mormont is incredible. She is so cool. That is like one of the coolest characters I've ever seen on TV.
Yeah, and it's just so amazing, like, especially after, like, she has commanded the screen and, like, her presence, and then you see, like, the memes that are out there, like, oh, if Lyanna Mormont had been around for, like, the first 2 seasons, it'd be over. Like, she'd have won everything.
She gets stuff done. That's what I like about her.
Oh, man, she is so incredible, like as like just like a minor side character, just getting that much respect and love from people that are watching the show is just, I love that. I love when things like that happen with characters.
Oh, it's the best. Like those ones that they're not the main attraction or anything like that, but they have such a powerful fan following. It's like, that's when you know you really created something special.
Now, beyond Lyanna Mormont, do you have any other favorite characters in the series?
Lady Brienne is always going to have my heart. She's like her and Lyanna Mormont. I feel like those are like 2 little peas in a pod. I'm like, Lyanna's going to grow up to be Bree. Like, she's such a strong woman, and she's so just like, I love how she's so unswayed by other people's opinion of her. Like, that's what I really love about Bree. She's like, no, I'm going to do this. You know, I don't care what you think. And she really, really holds strong to what her values are, despite what other people are saying and doing around her. She's like, I'm not going to do, you know what I mean? She's very much strong in her convictions, and it's so admirable. And she's like the only knight in that particular area. Like, you know, we've seen other like women warriors, like the Sand Snakes and everything, but she's the exception in her society, in her culture, and it's so admirable and it's so cool.
Right, and she's the only one that actually, you know, she gives her word. She's the only one who keeps her word through like the entire series at this point.
It's really cool. It's really revealing. I'm going to be interested to see how they end it. I have like a few little theories.
Oh gosh, I as a person who's read the books, like obviously they deviated after a certain point, and you're like, okay, you have to start separating TV show from what you've read, and it's like we'll see where they go. And I know George R.R. Martin has given them like direction of like overall direction, but not like the little minutia. So I'm really interested to see. Like last season was super fun just to see just what they're going to do and what happened. Next season with the 6 episodes that they're doing, that's going to see like just how are they going to wrap everything up so quickly with just those 6 episodes.
See, and that's what I was wondering too, and I actually have a theory about that. I think they're going to jump around in time quite a bit. Because I feel like, I'm like, how else would you do it? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I feel like they're going to, I feel like they're going to jump around quite a bit with like time. And isn't it supposed to be like crazy long episodes too? Yeah,
they're talking that at least some of them were supposed to be over an hour to an hour and a half on each one.
So it's like a movie.
They're all going to be like mini movies essentially.
Which I love. Like, I love that. I think that is so cool. Like, I love everything on HBO, almost, I feel like. And I would love to see entertainment go more of that direction. Like, stuff with HBO where it's like a series like that, and each episode is focused on like a movie. It's not just like some kind of like thrown together TV episode. Like, the quality with HBO productions is just, the standard that they set is so high. And everything is just, it seems like, is so phenomenal. And I love that they're doing that with this. I think it's the coolest thing.
It is. I like number one that they take that HBO takes risks on their properties, whether it's Game of Thrones and Westworld currently, or back when I was super into HBO, it was like The Sopranos and Oz.
Yeah.
And there's something else, Rome, that they did. You know, that lasted 2 seasons, and the only reason that they finished that series is that the sets burned down.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well.
Which is funny.
It cost them like
think about it.
Yeah, it cost them millions of dollars to do. And then it's like, oh, the sets are burned. You can't really.
Did Rome burn down?
Yeah. Investing that money can't be done again for building another Rome.
For sure.
But yeah, I think that's one of the things I love about HBO and like what Netflix and Hulu have started doing now. And then like on the flip side, like BBC does with some of their shows like Sherlock, when Sherlock was at the height of its like super popularity, where it's like they'll do 3 episodes, but then it's like 2 hours each or 2.5 hours each.
Right. Definitely. I like it. I prefer it.
Who do you want to essentially win at the end of Game of Thrones? Is there a winner? And if so, who is it?
I think that's what's going to be revealed. I don't know. You read the books, so you would know better than me. But
no, because the books are not even anywhere close at this point. Not even.
I knew, because I was going to say, like, I knew that he's still going. He's like still writing them, but I have no idea like where the books are in comparison to the movie, though. Like, have no like. Oh no, the movie's passed that up like a while ago. They said that, didn't they?
Oh yeah, because the last book that came out, the major thing was that Jorah and Tyrion were not even Tyrion hasn't even met Daenerys yet. Like, that's how way back it is.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I see, and I think that might be kind of. We'll see where he goes. I haven't been reading the book, so I'm not really sure like a lot of his style or anything. But I have had something stuck in my head since we've started watching the show, which has been like. Cersei saying you either win or you die with the Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if everybody's going to die and there won't be a winner. But I don't know if that's like too like, you know, like, whoa. And it's just like, it just doesn't work. And then it's almost like how it happened like with the Targaryens, where there's like almost this like extinction and like a new rebirth after it. So it might be like a transition into like a new time and like nobody really wins. I don't know.
When I did my Game of Thrones wrap up, one of the people suggested that he was behind Team White Walker, like just kill them all.
Oh, just like like the White Walkers end up taking over the world.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at, or it's like, or even if they don't, it's going to be like a new age with like a new focus or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then it turns into Earth, and this was actually, century, millennia ago on planet Earth. I have no idea where the direction it's going to go.
They'll pull a Battlestar Galactica and be like, "Oh, our ancestors were actually the people on Battlestar Galactica."
Yeah, that's actually a really good example. I'm sure George R. R. Martin won't go that way, and I don't know, because it's hard to tell. It's like, is it going to be like a little twist, or is it going to be something where it's like, Jon Snow and Dany do their thing, and it's totally predictable, and there's a happy ending. But I have like some faith in George R. R. Martin that he's like, well, history never ends up that way, where everything's all fine and dandy, and it's a happy ending. That's not how the history is. And for it being fantasy, I think he's very realistic in his portrayal of like people and their actions and their motivations and that kind of a thing.
Definitely. And now going from the fantasy realm to history, you have a podcast called the Dirty Bits Podcast.
Yes, I do.
Now, for those who are not familiar with it, if they're listening to this podcast for the first time, can you please tell us all about the Dirty Bits Podcast, like what it is, what you do?
I would love to. So what it is it is a very casual and hopefully comedic retelling of the scandalous, salacious, sexy stories from history that you probably didn't learn about in class because they're a little racy. So that's what I do, is I tell it in a very casual manner. So for example, we have a Catherine the Great episode, and I'm like, so Catherine the Great rolls up to Russia and she marries this guy, and she's like, oh. And then after that, she's like, oh my gosh, I need to get on Tinder because this guy's super gross and I need to get pregnant. So it's kind of one of those like very casual, I guess is like really the only word to describe it, retelling of those historical events. And I try to make it so it's fun. I do it in character, is kind of like the, SoCal Valley girl. So I play up my accent, and it comes across like kind of that, sexy Valley girl thing, if you find that sexy. But it's a lot of fun. We have a blast with it. We do a lot of research. It's scripted, and we release an episode every week. And right now we're doing Old Hollywood, and it's been a blast.
How did you decide to do the podcast, especially because it's something, there's a podcast for everything, as I have learned. Mm-hmm. How did you come to do this podcast?
I saw that there wasn't anything like it, which actually really surprised me. Like when I had the idea, my husband and I were just like Googling, and we're like, okay, it's like sex and history. Okay, history is sex, but it's like there's nothing really with the whole, okay, there's a character talking about this specific trend or this specific topic in history. And it just kind of grew from there. I don't know if there was like anything. It's kind of a combination of a lot of things. Like I love Drunk History. I love Thug Notes. I love Alt Shift X, who does a great show on Game of Thrones, actually. And it was just like my favorite things from all these shows, all the things that I really enjoyed. I think they really influenced me in my creation of the show. And that's probably where most of the inspiration came from. I'm a voiceover actor by day, and I knew I wanted to do a podcast just from that. I'm like, well, I have the equipment. I was like, I can do that. And I wanted to use it to showcase just like my audio skills, my voice acting skills, my production skills. And it just kind of took off from there. And I thought it was going to be more of a side thing. And it's been very much transitioning over into like the main focus of my occupation. So we're working on going full time this year.
That's awesome.
So it's exciting. Yeah, it's a goal. We'll see if it happens, but it's the company goal right now.
One of the things that I love about your podcast is that it is as far as for me, like my commute used to be like 30 minutes each way. Mm-hmm. So I could knock out like an hour-long podcast if I listened to it front to back, or on each drive each way. Or like now my commute is a lot shorter, and your podcast fits perfectly in that like time of like, you got 20 minutes, 25 minutes, you can listen to an episode of Dirty Bits.
Well, thank you. We've had quite a few people tell us they want much longer episodes, so you might have to readjust to that. But
dun dun dun.
Oh no! But that's actually the number one request we get is like, can you do longer episodes? Which we're trying to do with the day job, which is kind of one of the reasons we want to go over in this to full time, is because it takes way more time than I think people imagine it would, because it's scripted.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just me going in there and like going, off the fly, like improvisation or anything. Everything in there is scripted. The research that we do, it's definitely to complete one episode is well over 20 hours of work a week on top of the like 60, 70 that we already do as like freelancing with audio entertainment. So it's tough to get them longer, but we're really working on it. So we're hoping we can do that for our love bugs, as we call our listeners.
All right. I was going to ask you that because I've talked with a few people from like different podcast walks of life, like true crime and, just other podcasts, some similar to mine, or some where it's just like them talking back and forth to each other. Some people do no prep. Like my prep is limited to just essentially reaching out to people and making the contacts and getting my pre-show questionnaire back. And it seems like for your show or for the true crime stuff, like there's a lot, like just a lot of research that goes into it. And you said it's about 20 hours for one episode.
Minimum 20 hours, yeah.
What's the I guess what's your process as far as you pick a person and then from there you just look up and write and research and background, like check and go through all that, like that, those motions to get it just that concise?
Yep, pretty much. It involves, first you have to find a subject and you have to go, okay, is there enough content here to turn this into a big, long episode here? Because that's a lot of the issue is, you find something out that's kind of fun about somebody and it's like, okay, that's like a 5-minute show because like they just did this one kind of little, kooky thing. And that's tough. Like nobody wants to even listen to 5 minutes, right? Like you need to put out something that's at least 15 for it to be like worth it, I feel like. So that's a huge part first, is like doing the research and going like, okay, is there enough that I can like draw this into a full entertaining episode? And then it's compiling all of that research. We check all the research too, because we have to, there's so much stuff, especially with history, where it's like conflicting. So it's like, okay, is this a fact or is this something that's controversial among historians? Because as casual as it is, and as much as I mention like, the slang and I paraphrase and do all that stuff, like we're doing Greta Garbo right now. She didn't go to In-N-Out and have a meeting with her manager in the 50s, and wasn't like, you know what, I'm going to grab a Neapolitan shake and get out of here. Didn't happen. But the thing is we want the actual facts to be extremely accurate. Like we are, as you can tell on the show, I had to Google Grave of the Fireflies in the middle of the show. We're very much sticklers for that. So that takes time, is to cross-reference everything, make sure that you're getting the actual facts so you can present it that way, where it's like either, okay, this is a fact, this is debatable, some say this, some say that, or it's a rumor. And then you're compiling the outline, how you want to present it. And then after the outline, I'm doing all of my rewording, telling the story, in my Tawny voice and, in the way that character speaks. And then after that, you have to do the rehearsal. And after that, you do the recording, the editing, the sound mixing. So it's quite a bit of work. It's it pretty much goes exactly like how we said like that. So you have your full research, your outline, your script writing, your rehearsal, and then your recording and your editing, all your production. And we do that every single week.
That like it blows me away when I hear like you say it, or when I hear my true crime people say it, and just like to invest that much time, I like it. Just it's such a phenomenal thing for what you produce, but at the same time I'm just like, I can't imagine like spending that time, but it's so much fun, like getting to listen to it. Like it's well worth it for me as the listener.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Has there been somebody that you're like, oh, I really want to do an episode on this person, but because you couldn't find enough information, like it wouldn't have made a full episode?
Yes, actually, that's a great question. One of them was, what's that guy's name? I always mix up C.S. Lewis and Lewis Carroll. C.S. Lewis, there was like this rumor going around, and I just could not find enough information about it, that he was like allegedly like into S&M. which was like, I don't know if I can say that on your show.
You can, it's fine.
Okay. So he was originally like into that kind of thing. And I was like, wait, Mr. I love Jesus and, all that kind of stuff. I was so intrigued by that. And there was not enough information to say one way or the other with like backing evidence. And I'm like so fascinated about it. And it was one of those things I simply do not have the time and the resources to really truly do an investigation past like just, what I have found, which it seems like it was a rumor. It seems like it was like a lot of people just like kind of taking a very, very short amount of evidence and like just kind of running away with it. But there's a lot of stuff that, just being at the level I'm at, I don't have the time or like the resources to like go, okay, what actually was said. There's some things that are tougher to get access to at this point. So with that one, I would love to find out what was going on with that. It seems so, I was like, oh my gosh, please like have done something that goes against like your character here because it's so interesting. So that's the one that really really stands out in my mind. And then, I think that was the biggest one. Usually with most people, it's more that you can you find out something kind of interesting about them, but it's not enough for like a full episode, if that makes sense. Just because there's not enough like even details like to really spin. It's like, okay, and they said this and there's not really a lot of information. We don't know like what happened past that. And those are easy to forget because it is just so final like that, where it's like, that's literally like, there isn't even just like, oh, I'd have to go to this particular campus library and find that they're paved to get access to these like documents or something. It's just, there really is like literally like no information. So those are the tougher ones that you just have to kind of go like, okay, moving on.
Okay. Is there one that on the flip side where you started off with maybe like a little bit and then you just like it turned into a snowball, like a snowball of, oh my gosh, I can't believe there's just so much out there?
Greta Garbo was that one. We had to break her up into 3 parts because it ended up being, in rehearsal at least, it ended up being an 80-minute episode. And for me, as a voice actor and doing all that, we had to cut it up into chunks because that's a lot. That's a big performance. So that was the one that it definitely snowballed where I was like, okay, Greta Garbo, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much here. I was like, I could do hours of Greta Garbo. She's fascinating. So that was a big one. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The more modern you get, the more information is there because obviously it was more current. The documents are going to be more accessible. They're going to be easier to understand, just more readily available. The farther back you go, the tougher it can be, like to get that information.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine that because at a certain point, it's just things just start dropping off, or like you said, they're going to be in some library where it's not digitized, or you have to pay money to request it, and yeah, always the tough things.
It is that's the part that you want to go full time and get those sponsors so you can do that stuff. That's the motivation there. Is I'm like, I could get to the Library of Congress. I just need a little bit of funding.
Now, on top of the Dirty Bits podcast, you also do the voice acting. If you want to talk about that for just a little bit, that's cool too.
Yeah, that's actually how the Dirty Bits got started. Was I was a voice actor originally, or I am a voice actor. That's what I do. It's my day job. And I'm also a coach, so I teach people who are interested in getting into voiceover, what the industry standards are, mic technique, how to interpret and deliver client scripts, because when you get them, it's a lot of times just like, we want this read in a conversational millennial mom voice, and you have to read the script and just go, okay, so what does that mean? And that's what I teach people how to do. I teach people how to find voiceover jobs and how to send them, how to interpret and deliver scripts, everything that goes into voiceover, pretty much except the tech part, because that's the part I need help with all the time. But yeah, that's how it got started. The Dirty Bits got started originally was just from doing that, and I do mostly commercial and internal work and independent video games right now, and it's a blast. It's so much fun.
That's so awesome. And like, I know, one of the things that I love, and is about a lot of the podcasts that I follow is that you have a very active like Facebook group that people can totally get into. I love like when it's like, oh, Tawny's streaming something on Facebook Live. Let me see what she's doing. And like sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's just like the voices that you do. Like I love getting to just whenever it just happens and I'm like, oh, I can actually click on it and listen to it. It's so cool.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad to hear that. I love interacting with the listeners. That's one of the best parts about what we do is like just the community is like so engaged and it's fun because it's like you feel like you're just, you know, you're talking to all your friends and everybody's really sweet and kind and it's all those like little warm fuzzy things that make it really, really fun.
Yeah, it's not like you're putting something out there and there's like you're just talking to the void of, well, is anybody out there listening?
Exactly. Like that's what's I'm so grateful for with doing this is like our community of like love bugs, they seem like they really, really, really enjoy it and they really like being a part of it and hanging out with like me and George and like talking about it. And like they seem like they genuinely really just like us. Like I don't know if it's like the, you know, just like the show more or whatever, but like it seems like they're your friends. Like it's like, oh, we like Tawny. I'm like, I like you too. Like that's what's like so much fun about it. So, you know, there's like you hope that that's what it is. It certainly feels that way. Feels like you have a bunch of friends.
Yeah, exactly. Like give me a little bit of validation. That's just tell me that you like something. I'm good. Okay.
It's good, right? It's good, right?
And if people are interested in getting to become a voice actor,
if you are interested in that, you can find me at tawnyvoice.com. And I have a lot of really helpful articles on becoming a voiceover actor. And then I also do coaching sessions too. So if that's something you're interested in, we can help you out there as well.
Awesome. And all those links will be on our show notes and the website and the Facebook page and pretty much everywhere that you can find our podcast at. There will be links to everything that Tawny just mentioned. So you can easily click on them. And Tawny, I want to thank you so much for making the time because I know you're super busy and there's always research to be done and work to be done, but taking the time to come and talk with me over here on my podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love all the fandoms, so I was really excited and I appreciate you having me on.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.